So it's time for the art critique. Today, since we have less time than usual, I'm gonna be doing something a bit unique. I'm gonna be doing an art critique specifically on the payload and as an asset of the game. And let's see what we come up with. Also, I'm going to go specifically to Cactus Canyon because if we have the time, we can perhaps compare the creative visions of them to figure out if we see any similarities. The creative visions that I interpret, and that should possibly tell us something. Cactus Canyon payload. I'm choosing Cactus Canyon because that's the map I did an art critique on the other day. So let's begin. Can I move, please? There we go. So okay. Naturally, I'm talking about the basic payload because there are different maps with different payloads, right? But anyway. So, before I begin, I just want to say that I'm gonna be talking a little bit about game design, but this is something I'm not gonna go in depth in there. This is something different. I'm gonna focus especially on the visuals here of in this case, the payload bomb. And also I wanted to say that for this art critique I'm gonna be using Feldman's method, which is all about going on four steps in order: description, analysis, interpretation, and judgment. On the description we're gonna describe what we see, on the analysis we're gonna talk about the elements of art, on the interpretation I'm gonna interpret the artistic visual, and finally on the judgment I'm gonna call this successful or unsuccessful based on the principles of art, which are basically refer to how the artists used the elements of art. So yeah, so basically we're gonna look at how the elements are used, compare that to the artistic vision, see how well they work together. So without further ado, let's begin. So the payload bomb. Let's see. Description. What do I see? What's this? Oh. So it's like a bomb with a light stuck to it, and it's on top of a little cart thing, right? With rails and everything. And here at the back of it also there is this, can you notice that is a separate part from the bomb? Like there is this part of the bomb, gray one, this one blue, with details in gray. So those are apparently separate, right? And okay, here we can see some distance between them, small one but still. Okay. And there is this thing also with a bunch of, it's like a container with a bunch of ammunition, also this, oxygen cylinder, and a little chimney stuff. So yeah, considering the gameplay, we know we recover ammo and health on this, so anything else for me to describe? Let's see this. Cry some more. Hooray. What else is there to describe? The bomb on the cards. I guess the front part of the card has some broken planks of wood because of the size of the bomb, right? And also for ammo we see like rockets, the clips of ammo for the minigun, I would say. Also what appears to be a girder for the engineer, I guess. What else? The pipes. Do I see a grenade here? Is this a grenade for the demo man? I don't know. What else? And some other stuff. Some pipes, I don't know for which character, but anyway. Also, do I have a ammo pack real close here? I have a small one over here. Okay, whatever. So I think that's a good enough description without getting into more in depth on the elements of art, which is what we're going to do next on the analysis. So most sources consider there to be 7 elements of art: lines, shapes, forms, space, texture, color, and value. But some also consider points to be an element of art, and that's kind of I agree with those authors. So I'm gonna be considering 8 here, adding points and dots. And yeah, so let's talk about those. You don't need to follow any order for the elements, but let's start with points and dots. So are there any here? We could mention, for example, these ones here, right? And these ones maybe also here on this part of the bomb. Okay, I just gotta be careful because often what I see as points, I believe are actually, or lines, I believe are actually other elements of art, in disguise, let's say. So let me think. If this wouldn't be a dot, points, would it be something else in this case? Yeah, I think they are more like I don't know. I was going to say like either the textures of the forms of the wood. I never know if they are like both at the same time, or they're just dots, even though they look to me a lot like they're conveying the imperfections on the wood, something like that, right? So it's kind of annoying sometimes to make out what element are we talking about here. Because we gotta be careful, because stuff like this, is there like a line here? No, not really, right? We can make out that it's just 2 planks with some distance between them. So this wouldn't be the element of line, so we gotta be careful here and make some calls. Well, let's look at the other ones beforehand. For example, this here I think it's an easier one. These I think are more the forms of the bomb being conveyed here. It's like some very small elevations, small ball things, let's say. So in this case I think it's not; those are not points. What can I? Maybe if I change weapons. Okay. So in this case, I think they are not points. I think they are the element of forms. And what else? There was also this part here. For this part, are they like nails that were used to place together parts of the bomb? In this case, I don't know, honestly. I think I'm gonna consider this one points. Bit of unusual for me, but honestly, I don't know. It just feels more intuitive to me. I don't know. At least this to me look like points, and over here maybe also, even though again to me they communicate a bit of the forms and or the nature of the material, the texture of it, as we say. I don't know. I'm gonna consider these points as well, honestly. And whatever. Let's do something different this time. So if that's said, so that's why we see points. So over here on this part of the cart, and over here also symmetrical, and on this part of the of the bomb, right? And this thing here, we're gonna talk about then when it comes to farms. So, and shapes, I guess we could also say. So anyway, with that said, for the elements of points, these ones are all of them are painted black, right? So what else? Also, you might be surprised how much you could talk about for points, especially if you consider something like the pointillism, I think, technique that the artists used on the postmodernism art movement. So, in this case, I don't think this is pointillism. So what is it that I could talk about them exactly? Because I was thinking about the position between them. Is that good enough of something to talk about? I guess, yeah. I just gotta be careful because the space between them is another element. But I would say they are like this part. The points are fairly symmetrically distributed, right? And with some distance to them between each, although that's the element of space, but whatever. And these ones here on the sides of the payload are mostly conveying, as I said before, a bit of the situation of the material, right? It's like not an imperfect wood. Maybe a woodpecker made these holes, these very small holes in it, or maybe it was just time and weather. Probably not time and weather in this case, but I don't know. Maybe it's some sort of, since they're symmetrical, that's I was thinking that it should probably is not an accident, but I don't know. Okay, the fact that they are symmetrical it's kind of weird, but whatever, right? And yeah, well, what else can I say for points? These ones are not that stark, I would say. They're kind of blurry, so their opacity and their I don't know. I'm thinking like how easily discernible they are. They are a little bit blurry, so not that discernible. And these ones are also something similar, right? That's why they look kind of blurry. That's why I said it to me look mostly as something, either a form or texture. But anyway, so yeah, that's what we said. For points, some sort of symmetry around them, a bit blurry and a bit not perfectly opaque, I would say. So perhaps they are opaque, but the color of the points is not that stark, let's say. Anyway, I guess that's it that we have to talk about for points, possibly. Let's talk about the elements of lines. So where do we see lines here? Again, there is the we gotta be careful with stuff. Not sure. Mix up different elements. In this case, we have like this line, kind of, but which again to me looks like paint that has faded over time. So that ties well also to the element of texture. What else? Maybe this is a line that we could consider here. What else? This again, I think it's forms and value, light and shadows. And what else? Considering classic Team Fortress 2 aesthetics, stuff like here have no lines, because if there is a line here, how thick the line is. I always ask that when I'm in trouble. And there are none. We can just discern the two sides of it because of the difference in color and value, mostly value, right, I believe. And something similar here for these wooden planks, for these ones. What else? I guess over here, again, the problem of is these lines or is these farms, because it kind of looks like a sublevation on the wood, right? So would these be farms or lines? I'm gonna call these lines this time. I think I'm gonna try to be a little bit more intuitive. And over here though, they would be like a thicker, this would be a thicker line, so I think this we can call either value, light and shadow, or farms. But anyway, so our lines here are either are over here. We have this one on the sides, on each side of the bomb. Also, oh, okay, I guess here we have some dots also. Points, should have mentioned those, right? And I was talking about points. So anything that I would say for them? Oops. Can I get on top of the payload, please? Thank you. So anything I would say for those? Here they follow basically the outline of the bomb, right, on this part, exception of these middle ones. So yeah, that's my analysis on it. But still, the stuff that I said before I think are also valid here. They're kind of blurry, not that discernible, not that stark of a color, and they're all black points, black dots. So yeah, anyway, back to lines, that's where we were. So we have these ones at the side of the payload, at the bomb, the payload. Over here, do we have any? I don't think so, mostly farms, right? And we have, oops, and we have these ones over here on the wooden side. I think that's it for lines. And maybe we, yeah, no, I think this is farms and value here, not lines. I don't know, whatever. So for lines, they're again, much like the points, they are mostly black, right? No, they are all black, I think. So these ones on the bomb and these ones on this part of the payload of them are black. And what else? For stuff like thickness, curvature, these ones are relatively thick, right, on the bomb. And these ones on the wood are a bit thinner, and they do not have that much curvature to them. Also the thickness is, let's see, in general regular. I don't see that much change in the thickness of it, so regularity in the thickness, and really, like, there is a very small one, but barely any curvature to the lines here. This one also, and here just no, I think no curvature at all, right? So yeah, black, regular thickness, relatively thick, these ones, and this other one a bit less so, and barely any curvature. Okay, so that's it for my analysis on the elements of lines here. Let's talk about the element of shapes, which is the stuff that you get, for example, if you enclose a space with a line, even though you don't need lines to have shapes. So they are always two-dimensional. So for example, this part of the bomb here, we have a circular shape. Although when we look at the different angles, since this is three-dimensional, we can do that. And if we look at a different angle, can you help me? I was trying to buy some Gnapina at the supply side now to get on this. I can just click on the supply side part of the job. Saturday tonight. What do I do? No idea, my friend. I'm not the right person to ask for something like this. So anyway, okay, looking at it through this angle, it's kind of a half moon, right, of a shape. And so yeah, this part. So for the shapes that are most common, most notable here, shape of the bomb is notable in different angles, right? What else? Over at this one, it's a bit more circular, but still. We have rectangular and yeah, mostly rectangular shapes considering the carts. Look at it from many angles. The rectangular are this is kind of a weird hexagon a bit right here. If you consider like one, kind of look like an egg. Yeah, the bomb. That's why I refer to it as an oval shape. So yeah, the cart here, it could be, we could look at it as a hexagon if you look at it like there's like one side here, one here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a very weird hexagon, right? But on some angles we kind of see that shape. It's not a regular hexagon. It just has 6 sides, but it's a weird shape in any case, right? What else? Over here, kind of rectangularly shaped this part. Again, due to this part, this thing also gives off that kind of shape, right? What else? Grab ammo, why not? And we have stuff like the cylinder, which with its own shapes, and also the different ammunitions. It's not that easy to just describe it with something geometrical. And finally, each plank is a rectangle also. And yeah, I think that's mostly it. So a lot of rectangular shapes, some hexagonal ones. The bomb is mostly oval, right? Egg-shaped. Also here another rectangle shape, I guess. And there's a bit of more unique shapes on this back part of the payload with all the different ammos, the oxygen cylinder, I don't know what this is, and a bit of this chimney here also, I guess. So that's it for shapes. Let's talk about now forms, the element of forms, which is about three-dimensionality and depth and height and width, but forms are always 3D. So for the forms here, yeah, we also change our terminology when we can. So for the forms of the bomb, it has like forms of an egg, right, as my dear viewer pointed. But also with this more cube-like form at the back part of it, even though it's kind of a hollow cube, right? But it's there. Also, considering the cart, we have also some sort of hollow block forms here. Form, roughly. Except underneath it, where we have the small wheels and a bit of this support thing, I guess, to refer to climb on or to ride the payload, I guess. On the cylinder we have a cylindrical form. Also on the chimney, a block-like form on this part that dispenses ammo and stuff, and also many cylindrical forms here on the ammunition, right? On the rockets, on the pipe. And also something more unique on the girder and the other clips of ammo here, like this one. Not that geometrical of a form to describe. So I think that's mostly it for the forms. A lot of geometrical ones, right? Cylinders, blocks, cubes, and the bomb, the giant egg of the bomb. So yeah, that's it for forms. Let's talk now about the element of space. That's a cool one. How do you see the use of space here? Because for example, this part here is totally the use of space, right, for the payload. We have a little bit of it down there, although it's pretty more of a tight use of space. And also here on the bunch of emos and stuff all clumped together, naturally there's going to be a very tight use of space there. Also, in general, between the planks and these tight spaces here, all of that, very tightness around the payload in general. A lot of tightness. It's not like a perfect fit because there will be no space whatsoever, right? So that there's a lot of these tight spaces and stuff in farms that they don't fit perfectly. And yeah, that's mostly it. The parts with the most generous use of space is on this part of the bomb, right? Which is not even that much generous, honestly. Oops, what am I doing? It's not even that much generous. It's just like a bit less tight than the other stuff that I mentioned, right? So mostly tight use of space here, and I think that's it. Also, I guess over here on the on this broken part of it, yeah, mostly tight. And anything else that I would say for the use of space? I don't know. Yeah, mostly tight and tied to those areas, the exception this part of the bomb. So now let's talk about the element of texture, which is about the surfaces of objects, of different parts of the artwork. So for example, here you can see it very well, I think, the details on the surface of the wood. That's basically the element of texture. And again, considering how blurry the dots, the points here are, maybe it could tie a bit to it, but again, I'm gonna still consider them as points, unlike I did for this here, right? This stuff here, which I think they communicate more the form of the bomb, but even then, they didn't come too much of my attention when we were talking about the forms, right? So in any case, what else about textures? Over here, I think it's another example of it, where we can see the paint kind of faded. So once again, the element of texture here. And finally, what about here? Okay, so this metal part here also a little bit of texture on it also being portrayed. Anywhere else? Again, once again, the paint being scraped off. Once again, the wood. And oops. Okay. And finally, over here on top, anything different? You don't see much of it on this light or the chimney. Yeah, maybe a little bit at the base of the chimney. So that's the textures I see. And for my analysis on the textures, again, they're mostly following realism, as I say for many Team Fortress 2 textures. Like over here, this texture is tied to coal burning, let's say, and I think it communicates that well from inside the chimney thing. Over here, you can see the many details of how the wood is. Very small ones, but they're there, kind of showing the imperfections on the different planks. Here on the paint of the bomb, it's either showcasing a lot of imperfections, or in this case of the bomb, tied to the passage of time perhaps, or something that scraped off the paint. Stuff like that. Yeah, realism and degradation, let's say, I think are what the textures are communicating the most here to me. So yeah, what else? Let's now talk about the element of rectangle space, texture. Let's talk about color. So is an easy element to understand. What are the colors used here? So we have blue, gray, brown, shades of brown, different ones, more than one. and a bit of is this a black or a darker shade of gray? I think it's a darker shade of gray. Don't think it gets to the point of being black. So perhaps this one is, perhaps not. And then those are mostly the. I think those are all the colors. And to me, the most notable ones are the brown of the cart, also on the underside part of the cart, I guess. The brown of the cart is what calls most of my attention, and alongside that, the gray and the blue, right? So that's basically all of the colors. Yeah, okay. But I guess mostly this lighter shade of gray calls more attention to me than the darker shades. And the blue, I think it's mostly the same shade, right? So yeah, especially the lighter, especially this part of the bomb, the lighter shades of gray is what caught my attention. And I think that's it. I don't think there's much else to talk about. I guess this light here has a different shade of blue than the bomb, so a darker one, right? And to me the lighter shade of blue is what caught my attention, so there's that. Only we mentioned the colors, and there's mostly just like a difference in the shades of what's most I don't know, noticeable to me. Okay, so now let's finally, the last element that we need to talk about is the element of value, which means like light and darkness, shadiness and brightness. We call it value because that's how it affects the color, so it's the value of the color. And indeed, one way to achieve different values is just applying black, raw black or raw white, the hue, or something like that. I'm not a designer, but anyway, that's kind of the idea. And so in this case we're kind of considering the light of the map, right? Because the light seems to reflect from this angle. So we can only do, so basically this is necessarily an art critique for the payload on Cactus Canyon, because of this. Although it shouldn't change too much from other maps, I believe, but still. For the use of value, here on Cactus Canyon at least, you can see the light being reflected on this part a bit brighter, on these other ones a bit shadier, right? And what else? Okay, oh, and I think here on the chimney also we can make out the brighter side and the darker side of it. Yeah. Okay, so for value, don't think it was used much eloquently, let's say. It seems like they're just only showing a source of light and showing how it affects the object. What else? Sometimes I talk about realism on the shades and the use of value for Team Fortress 2, but in this case I don't think it's that easy to see. I talked about it for the map, right, because we can kind of see the shapes of the stuff that are making the shadows, but in here I don't think that's easily seen, so I'm not gonna say that for this work of art, for the payload. But I will say that even on the shadier parts we can kind of make out the details very well. So, which is something that I also say often for Team Fortress 2, and this is no exception from what I see here. The shady parts, the darker parts are like mild, not that intense, it's not pitch black. You can still make out the details and stuff. So, that's it for the element of for the element of value. Now I'm gonna do an interpretation here of the creative vision, the next step of the art critique. So let's see here. Well, first things first, let's let's get the obvious out of the way, right? We are looking at this inside of the game. We have, when we play the game, we see this, and it's on the movies of the game, of Team Fortress 2. So I believe, I interpret an important part of the artistic vision, creative vision, was for this bomb to be a like game mechanic of Team Fortress 2, to be tied to the game mechanics of Team Fortress 2, the payload, game mode, and all of that. So yeah, okay. Yeah, kind of obvious, right? But I think it's important to be said. Okay, let's see what else would I add to the creative vision for the payload here. I think comedy was very important for the authors here, because of stuff like the bomb breaking the wood, so it's like a makeshift measure here. It was not exactly designed for it. Stuff like the writing here, cry some more, ah, you babies. So they're taunting the enemies. What else? Also this little light here, as it kind of giving the idea that it could be like a car, for example. And so watch out, lights on, the lanterns are on. I'm passing through, watch out. Or something like that, perhaps. Which is comical because it's a freaking bomb, right? So that's where I see some of the comedy. What else? Maybe with the whole bunch of stuff being dispensed back here, but I don't. But I think maybe not that much. Mostly on this front part stuffs here. And so humor, I think, was an important part of the creative vision here. And what else? To make an object tied to the payload, payload game mode for Team Fortress 2, to make something comical. Yeah. Okay, this might sound a bit repetitive, but I think not necessarily. But I think that was important part of the creative vision for this to be a bomb. But oh, isn't that just already the idea of payload? Not always, right? Depending on the map, the payload is a train, or the payload is a drill on payload bread space. We have, what else? What other maps have a different payload? Although, to be fair, on most of them the payload is a bomb, but we have some exceptions, and so I think that's good enough for me to consider this a separate idea for the creative vision, for this to be a bomb. Also, we could tie a little bit to the game design, because I think on some maps there is a ticking noise near the bomb. But sadly, that's not. We're not considering sounds for this art critique, just the visual aspects here. So yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find anything else for this, for their creative vision here. Just calling it a funny bomb from Team Fortress 2, I think it says a lot about it. Oh well, and I guess I might as well add another last idea. I just came up with one. For this to be a train. And again, because that's not always the case for depending on the payload. For again, payload bread space, it's not necessarily a train, it's a drill. And are there any other exceptions? Frontier is literally a train. On Halloween maps, there is some that there is it's a cauldron. Although on that one, so that's different from a bomb, but I think it's like a cauldron, similar to this bomb, a cauldron on rails, so on a cart. So what else? Is Brad Space the only exception? I wonder if even if the drill of Brad Space actually has is like a drill on a cart. I would have to check that out. Since the drill still has since the payload on that map still has the rails, I think maybe that's a bit redundant. I don't know. No, you know what? I'm still gonna mention it. I don't know. Maybe it's just saying that this is tied to the game mechanics of payload maps on Team Fortress 2. Maybe that's a different thing. Also, I'm considering this idea of adding to be a train thing here because of stuff like the chimney. I think the idea was to tie to steam trains where they shoved coal to heat the boiler, and so steam would come out. So yeah, using a little bit of what we talked about for the description here, and also naturally the other stuff that we talked about here, right? The cart basically. So, and I think that's good enough, right? I think that's good enough. So oh, okay. I was thinking about another idea. Actually, I was thinking maybe about something like a cartoony bomb, but I don't know how well that would be the case and how well that's already tied to Team Fortress 2. I don't know. Whatever. Let's leave it at 4 ideas for the art critique. Considering the idea of something cartoony, I think already ties to Team Fortress 2, and I'm not sure how cartoony this is because bombs on cartoon are usually TNT, dynamite, right? So, with some specific exceptions, but anyway. So the 4 ideas here for the creative vision that I'm interpreting are to make an item object tied to the payload game mode for Team Fortress 2, to make it comical, and to make it a bomb, as we can look at it, and the A-train. And you might think, well, isn't that a bit obvious? But the important part is how well they convey it, honestly. And so, and also whether or not it was a deliberate choice of how they have done it, whether or not it was an accident, let's say. Because, for example, here on Cactus Canyon, on this map, we were talking about this part here on this gap, right? And when we were doing the art critique here, and the whole question, and one of the questions was, well, was this intentional? And we talked about stuff like contrast and unity, right? Principles of art, and so our conclusion is, at least for that art critique, was that this was intentional, and they just didn't bother to you know, place the to make the models, to take out this void thing and make it a proper canyon. But our conclusion is that they intended this to be the canyon eventually, I guess. And so that's the idea here. We're gonna see if this was if they got it right by accident or not. Let's say. So yeah, in any case, and that's what we're going to do right now on the judgment step of the art critique. So the principles of art, let's talk about those, which are about how the elements of art were used. So when it comes to the principles, there is, unlike the elements, there is like really not a consensus. Different designers and artists, at least on the internet, talk about all of them have different ideas for what the principles are. There's a lot of stuff that repeats itself, but still, like, I don't think people agree on a number of them. Some believe there are like 4 or 6, some believe there are like 14, some consider the elements to also be the principles. It's kind of a mess. So I'm going to be considering after my research, what makes the most sense to me, which is there to be 6 principles of art, which are movement, unity, contrast, emphasis, balance, and proportion, and a bunch of stuff that other designers, artists consider for principles. I kind of fit in one of the 6. So, for example, pattern, repetition, rhythm. To me, it's all inside Unity. I'm gonna explain a bit when I get there. Stuff like hierarchy and dominance, to me, is the same thing as emphasis. So on and so forth. So yeah. So anyway, so let's begin talk about those. First, the principle of movement. What is the principle of movement? Well, it's all about how a work of art can kind of move your eyes, guide your eyes in some sort of path or trajectory. There is a thing I always mention, Dragon Ball Z, Akira Toriyama. That manga had panels that naturally move your eyes to the next one, that panel to the next one, next one. So, very good example of the principle of movement. I'm here for the payload bomb 14 Fortress 2. Do I see the principle of movement somewhere? Let me see. What if I jump on top of the bomb? Does it help? Yeah. So there is a little bit, and I see it basically on the bomb itself, being accomplished by the forms and shapes of it. The egg shape kinda has 2 edges, let's say, not really an edge, but like thinner parts, right, of the egg, unlike a circle. The shapes and forms of the bomb of the egg. But one of those parts of it, one of those thinner parts, have this thing here, this like block, hollow block thing, rectangular shapes. That I think contributes to communicate a bit of to make up a bit of the principle of movement. Also the use of color, because the element of color here, because of the idea of gray and then blue. And a little bit of the contrast here with the gray on the front, although a different color I think would have helped a bit more perhaps, but still I think it helps a bit with the use of color, that element. And I think that's mostly it. So basically the elements of color, forms and shapes is what's helping me see the principle of movement here. Mostly it. Maybe a bit the element of points also help a bit, being on this part of the bomb, giving off some contrast. Contrast is another principle of art. Principles often influence each other, but we're gonna talk about contrast later. So anyway, yeah. With all that said, does it tie to the payload? Payload game mode 14 Fortress 2. I think a bit on the cartoonish side of things, just because it's a very like funny bomb, let's say. There are different bombs, it's not a missile and stuff. I think it ties a bit to Team Fortress 2. I said that I think usually in cartoons dynamite's the thing, but considering the, let's say, friendly shapes and forms here, I think it still fits the bill. So fits enough, I think, with Team Fortress 2 aesthetics when it comes to the principle of movement and all that stuff. And also having a direction, a clear direction, clear and straight direction ties to how the payload moves in Team Fortress 2. It always moves in the single direction. It does not go back. So it kinda can change the angle. but it does not move sideways like a crab. So that also ties easily to the principle of movement here ties easily to Team Fortress 2 aesthetics. Also, maybe this stuff that I said before for the friendly shapes, I'm not sure that's about the principle of movement too well. I mean, the way I phrased it, but whatever. I think it makes sense still. So what about the idea of something funny? Well, when it comes to the principle of movement, yeah, well, the friendly shapes again, I think helps to make something light-hearted, let's say. And so I think it's helping with that. The egg shape of it, so okay, helping. What about the idea of a bomb? Well, that's the easiest one, right? This is literally the shapes and forms of a bomb. Just the color that I don't think fits anything specifically, but that's easy. And finally, what about the idea of a cart, of a train? I don't think it helps, but that's fine. The question here is, yeah, okay, it's fine. The question here is, do other principles help later on? I think that's what we're going to see. That's more important to figure out. So, okay, what about the principle of unity, which means different parts of the art working together? Many ways to accomplish it, by the way. But for example, there being repetition on the brown here of the wood on the payload. Some way, the patterns of how it was built, also the continuity of the color of the bomb, like it's on this gray, and then even when the forms and shapes change, the color still remains. So all of that to communicate that this is the same object. So this is unity. Also proximity, another way to accomplish unity. All this stuff all clumped up together communicates, as I see it, they are functioning as some sort of stockpile of ammo and all that stuff, right? So unity here also, interestingly. And so, okay, all that said, does any of that help with the idea of an object for the payload game mode for Team Fortress 2? Being a cart, being a train helps with that, right? Being having the unit of the wood to communicate that this is some sort of cart ties very strongly to the idea of the payload. Even though I'm still not sure if the bread space drill is an exception. But I guess since most of the payloads are trains, are on tracks, are on carts, sorry, I think that's good enough. If I'm going to say that, maybe the idea of a train is redundant. I don't know. Let's see. What else? Let's just keep at it. What about the idea of to make something funny? Is there unity in there? Fair enough. There is some unity here because the proximity of all the broken wood on the front part of the bomb. I think that communicates that the bomb is too big, and so it broke the front of it because of the proximity of these broken parts. So I think that contributes to the humor. Okay, so what about the idea of a bomb? Well, we have unity, for example, on the shapes here, that even though, for example, this changes colors, there is continuity on the curvature here of the shape. And now that it helps to communicate that this is a bomb, you know, the uses of continuity on the bombs makes sense, right? Help make out the shape of a bomb. Unity usually helps with the creative vision. Hard not to. And finally, the idea of a train, I already said, right? The use of the patterns here of the planks and the repetition of the color, all of that tie well to it. And I just realized something. this bunch of stuff stacked together here, the ammunition, better than just saying it's a train. Now you can also consider the exception of the drill, maybe the exception of the drill from Red Space. This ties to the game mechanic of the payload recovering your health when you're near it, right? And ammo, especially ammo in this case. As this cylinder here is the Madigan's juice from the medic, but whatever. Anyway, so everything is helping when it comes to Unity. Who knew? What about the principle of contrast? So contrast is about different parts of the artwork, how different they are, how does that impact everything. So the contrast that I see is, for example, on the farms of the bomb, in contrast, like rounder farms, in contrast with the cart, which has more cube-like, rectangular-like, more straightness to the, especially to the shapes, and flatness to the farms. So that's a strong contrast that I see here. And what else? That's perhaps the strongest one, but we could also say stuff like, oh, there is the blue in contrast with the gray here, or also the green contrast with the blue. What else? Because if the ammunition and everything was gray, it would be, there would be no contrast there really. Oh, I mean, there would be some, but it would be a weaker contrast, let's say. So, does any of that tie to the payload, game mode on Team Fortress 2? Well, there being this contrast here between all the dark gray ammunition and the blue paint here helps a bit. Also that with the brown around, although it's a very like subtle contrast, but I think it helps a bit. So, huzzah, I guess. What about the idea of something funny and comical? Here's an interesting one. There being contrast between the broken parts and the normal parts, let's say, of the cart. I think there's some contrast there also. Because if everything was just broken, it wouldn't communicate anything, really, right? But necessarily, perhaps it would just be that, oh, the bomb is too big and they try to place it on a card that doesn't make sense. They try to do something that doesn't make sense, but in this case, being just one part of it broken, I think the idea is that they tried to place the bomb, it was too big, but it still kind of fits, so hooray, let's just go for it. Or something like that. One interpretation. Anyway, I think it helps with the humor. Being just this part that's broken and easier to notice because of the contrast with the rest that is not broken. So, end of stream time, but oh well. Let's see what I can do here. To go a bit faster. Okay, so what about the idea of a bomb contrast here? I think that there is some contrast that helps. Not only I mentioned the contrast between the more round and curvy forms and shapes of the bomb in contrast with the straight shapes and flat forms of the cart, of the planks especially, right? But also here this contrast between this part here on the back of the bomb and the rest. So accomplished especially through the use of forms and shapes. I think that helps also to communicate better that this is a bomb. This contrast that you can see here. Again, if it has everything, if there was not this part here, this square, cubic, hollow cube part, it will be harder to understand that this is a bomb, so the contrast is helping. And finally, what about the idea of a train, of being a cart? So as I mentioned, there's the stuff that I said for the shapes and forms of the bomb in contrast with the cart. I could also mention the colors, because you could argue there's some contrast between the brown and the blue and the gray. It's just that since the gray and the blue are kind of at the same spots, I think it's not that strong of a contrast as to me the shape contrast between shapes and forms. And also there's some here on the chimney with the blue of this box here thing, which I think helps make the chimney a bit more noticeable, and so that ties to the idea of a train, right? even though we don't see coal here anywhere. But probably inside this box, right? Anyway, what about, let's talk about the principle of emphasis now. Emphasis slash dominance slash hierarchy is about if there is some sort of point of the artwork with more focus, emphasis as the name suggests, that kind of keeps our eyes there. Movement is about moving our eyes, emphasis is about keeping our eyes. And so for the emphasis here, I think the contrast, considering the contrast between shapes and forms, I think that's where you see the emphasis also. So the principles of contrast and emphasis are kind of tied in this artwork here. Also, but not only that, also the broken part here in contrast with the bomb. So it would be a contrast between the shapes, the more like jagged shapes, and the complete whole part of the bomb. All of that, to me, I see that as giving emphasis to the bomb itself, especially to the rounder part of it, the egg part. And does any of that help with the idea of the payload game mode for Team Fortress 2? Not that much really, I think. Because, like, again, remember, a number of payloads are not bombs. Frontier is not a bomb, it's a train. Payload is a drill. On Halloween maps there is a cauldron instead of a bomb. So just focusing on the forms and shapes of the bomb, I don't think it's enough to tie to the payload game mode. Although, okay, again, there is many maps with bombs, so I guess I can't ignore that also. I just think, I don't know. I guess the real question is how important are the exceptions, right? Because the rule is for it to be a bomb. I don't know. I think there are enough exceptions there. When I was talking about the idea of a train, I think only possibly the bread space drill that I know is not a train, and maybe even that because I don't think I remember perfectly the bread space drill. But anyway, okay, I'm gonna just say that's not helping, but it could be, depends on how you look at it. I'm gonna consider that there's enough exceptions to say that just being a bomb is not enough to tie to payload in Team Fortress 2 necessarily. But feel free to disagree, honestly, because this part of the critique is a bit subjective, honestly. As ought to happen eventually in an critique. It's very hard to avoid it. Anyway, so what about the idea of something comical? To focus on the bomb here, emphasis on the shapes and forms of the bomb. I think it helps a bit because of stuff like the Chrysomar writing and the light here, because they are on the bomb. Technically, you could have this lantern thing here on the wooden part of the train. The Chrysomar could be back here. But since they have chosen to place these very visibly on the bomb itself, I think they're having emphasis on the bomb makes it very easy to see those, and so I think it's helping with the humor. In a way, it's basically where they place these things, right? But I do think both things work together. Because at the same time, if these things were here, but the emphasis was on some other part, then we could have an opposite argument, right? That they are not helping. So yeah, but I'm gonna consider that they are. The emphasis does for that logic is helping with the humor. What about the idea of a bomb? Easy. If we're focusing on the bomb, then that's being conveyed to us very easily. We are not thinking, oh, is this some sort of different dispenser? No, this is a bomb. So anyway, finally, what about the idea of a train? So in this case, the emphasis is not exactly helping with that, right? Because we're focusing on the bomb, the emphasis is there. I think if we consider not a single point of focus, if we consider a hierarchy, I think I would say the train is second, let's say, and back here with all the random stuff and being more at the back of the payload, considering the author's presentation, that has less focus. So if you think of hierarchy, if we use that terminology, then it helps a bit with the idea of a train. That's where different designers who separate hierarchy and emphasis could disagree with me, right? Since I'm bundling those together, I think that principle is helping here with the idea of a train. The principle of emphasis, because I'm considering it hierarchy as well. What about the principle? There's only two left. There's the principle of balance, which is all about there being some sort of state of equilibrium or tension, and how even or uneven that is. Does it look like something is gonna break? Does it look like something's gonna fall? That's kind of the idea. Well, it's I guess there had been some sort of tension here, right? But the wood broke, so now we can only see. If this wood was like bent, perhaps we would see a bit of the principle of balance here. But oh well. Other than that idea, a little bit of unbalance here because things are like kind of falling from the payload. So that's where I see unbalance, but the rest I think is balanced. The payload seems to be like something stable, it's not like falling or something, right? The center of mass of everything seems to be in a stable position, let's say. So yeah, just on this back here there is a little bit of imbalance because it feels like things are possibly falling down. And here on this front part, now it's balanced. Now it's probably gonna stay like that forever. So, but yeah, I wonder if I should consider this the principle of balance also. I think not. I think. Or maybe, I don't know, never faced this situation before. Maybe even if it's something that already happened, it still conveys unbalance. No, not really. At least, okay, my take on it is that it still conveys balance, and yeah, and so there is only unbalance here. And so at most the unbalance that there could be is that maybe it's pushing a little bit to the outside of the rail of the cart, sorry. But I don't know. I don't think I see unbalance on this part really. It's just that when we think about the story, it kind of ties to that, but that is something different, right? Anyway, does any of that tie to the idea of the payload game mode 1442? And well, it ties to the game mechanics, right? Because if there is this unbalance here of the ammunition falling down, that ties to the game mechanic of us recovering ammo when we are near the payload. Technically we recover ammo anywhere around the payload, but that includes the back part here, so I guess that's being communicated visually, and that's what's important. I don't think it needs to be like everywhere around the payload, as long as it's communicating a little bit, something, tied somehow to the mechanic. So yeah. What about the idea of something comical and humorous? This kind of is also that, because why did they make something that keeps? Why did they make some sort of storage that apparently is very easy for things to fall down, or either that, or they make a storage where everything's clumped together, so it's not organized. It's kind of unprofessional, right? It's kind of a haphazard solution here for whatever problem they had. So I see a little bit of humor here. because of the idea that apparently ammo is gonna fall down very easily. Either that or that's all like crumpled up. It's not like a professional ammunition seller, let's say, would do it. I don't know. What about the idea of a bomb? So I don't think that ties to bombs whatsoever, right? A bunch of ammunition on the box. But okay, I guess. And finally, what about the idea of a train? Again, this little imbalance, I don't see it helping, right? So, okay. Well, I guess I could mention this. The chimney is like irregular, like, right? It's a little bit tilted, so... But would that be balance? No, I guess that wouldn't be balance. The fact that it's tilted, perhaps it would be like variety, for example, which is like the opposite of unity, but we already talked about unity. Okay, yeah. So if the chimney was tilted a bit more in a way that it looks like it's falling possibly, then we could kind of say that, but I don't know. Just don't see it. And the rest, well, I guess we could say that like trains are usually balanced, have balanced designs by nature, right? So the rest of this being balanced, maybe we could say that. In other words, what if this was supposed to be some sort of train, but it had some sort of weird geometry design, would look more like a work of art. It would be weird, right? Possibly. So as far as conveying a train, possibly. So okay, maybe we can say that they're being balanced. It helps with the idea of the train. With the idea of the bomb, not sure. Not sure, because trains have like are stable stuff. Bombs, if anything, if you I don't know. Bombs, there are all sorts of bombs. I just don't think I would tie them to stability and balance. I don't know. Anyway, and we don't see unbalance here, right? The source of imbalance, as I said, is on this back part here. And so finally, let's talk about the last principle, the principle of proportion. It's all about the sizes of objects and things on the work of art. And so for the proportions here, I think like the smallest ones are on the bunch of ammo, on this, again, the oxygen cylinder, I don't know. And the lights, those are like the smallest ones. After that we have stuff like the box and the chimney, and after that we have the bomb and the train. And maybe down there also there's like the wheels of the train, I think, with a similar size to the box and the chimney. The chimney, you could say it's not exactly the same proportion as the box, maybe. You could say that ties better to the cylinder. Yeah, I think I will actually retcon that and say that for the proportions, the smallest ones is like the ammo. Let's do it like that. I think the ammo and the light, I think, are the smallest proportions. After that, the cylinder and the chimney. After that, the box and the train wheels. And after that, the bomb and the cart itself. I think that's a better way to look at the proportions here. So, does any of that help with the idea of making a payload for the game mode of Team Fortress 2? When it comes to the proportions, maybe the idea that the bomb and the cart are the bigger proportions here, the biggest, because the cart goes through the rails, right? And the bomb, the only problem is, what, as I said, it's not always a bomb, right? And a number of times it's a bomb. just not always, considering stuff like Frontier, Bread Space, and some Halloween maps. And I'm sure that there ought to be other exceptions also. But I don't know. I guess honestly, it gets to the point that it's just iconic being a bomb at this, honestly. I guess it's just iconic, even though there are many exceptions. I think they don't matter that much. And maybe I could even retcon something that I said before for considering that, but I don't think it's gonna matter too much, honestly. So I think it is helping because the bomb is iconic. Not necessarily... There are many exceptions of the bomb, but I guess the bomb is just iconic. That's probably a better way to look at it. And so being the important part here is that we have two things. The two things with the biggest proportions are the bomb is iconic and the cart is intrinsically tied to the idea, right, of a cart, a bomb on a cart, of a payload. That's usually a cart. Again, maybe Bread Space is the drill of Bread Space is not a cart, but the little choo-choo is a train cart thing. The cauldrons of Halloween maps are on carts. So anyway, I think it's helping. What about the idea of being comical and funny? Okay, so both the bunch of crumpled up ammo and the blue small light, both of those are like the smallest proportions, and both are tied to comedies, so I think the proportions here are helping. Because whenever you have something, a bunch of something with the same proportions and some similarity to them, I think it helps convey a bit of a message. And so these things I think help with that. Easier to notice than I would say, even though they're a bit far apart, but still. And what else? What about the idea of the bomb? In this case, the bomb has the same proportion as the cart, right? So I don't think the proportions are helping with conveying that, because they're kind of sharing. So, and likewise the train, the cart itself. We can also mention stuff like the chimney, but the chimney also shares a proportion with the oxygen tank thing, which I don't see as tied to carts whatsoever. So yeah, and finally the box and the wheels are whatever, right? Don't see them tied to anything that much. Maybe the wheels should the idea of payload mode, but then it's been shared with the box, so whatever. Anyway, with all that said, a number of, not all principles, but a number of them conveyed a bit of the creative vision, right? I think at least one principle helped with the creative vision. Unity helped with everything, right? Movement helped with a number of things, and so on. Not everything helped, but my judgment here is that this is a success work of art. I think it is enough principles helped out, conveyed the vision here. And so I'm gonna consider the payload a successful work of art. Congratulations, guys, the creators of the payload. I think you managed to pull it off. To me, this is, has a lot of clues that tie to the game mechanics. Also, a lot of humor in it. Our conclusion is that all of it apparently was deliberate, right? Because we consider the principles of art. So a lot of humor in it, a number of clues to help us focus and remember the bomb. Now that I think about it, I wonder if those are the principles that made the bomb iconic in the first place, but whatever. And also a number of clues to also make us think of the idea of a train, and so that's being conveyed well. So that's it, a successful work of art. And so, hope you guys enjoyed today's stream. Join me tomorrow for more, although tomorrow I play a different game. Tomorrow is Epic Battle Fantasy V. But on Monday we get back to Team Fortress 2 with gameplay and art critics. So that's it for today. Bye!